Good afternoon, evening, or whatever it is for you. And welcome to the show. If you're watching this after the fact on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, bell, that whole usual nonsense. And I am sponsored by Anycubic, but it's worth it. Easy mode for printing miniatures. It's all there is to it. Now, today will be a slight bit of a departure. It'll be a how-to, I guess you could say. And yeah, and basically what's going to happen is people in the chat over here are going, are going to ask me questions about how to sculpt a given shape or effect and how I would handle that. Now, I should note, I've got to warn y'all, there are any number of ways for any given effect, because it's just so versatile using ZBrush or even Sculptress or the Blender sculpting methods. I hear that Maya even has some integrated sculpting. So, I'm also seeing that I'm having problems with the broadcast and the stream. Okay. Well, just me for right now. Like I said, basically I'm going to be answering questions, and hopefully I'll be able to show you how I handle them. Also, once I've got a few more people in the chat, I'm probably going to go ahead and show off a few things that I've finished printing and or painting recently. This includes, I've printed Farragut both in FDM and resin, and I've painted the Basahuan, the little furry folk. I say little. Yeah, compared to the other giants, they're little because they're only 12 feet tall. Only. Yeah. But yeah, compared to all the big old monsters that I've done, yeah, they're kind of small. Let me go ahead and new activity. Nope, that's not what I want. Recent posts. There we go. There we go. Boom, 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 boom. Waiting on some people to come in with questions. Waiting when there's literally no one in chat. literally no one. There's literally nothing I can do with the format of Q&A. Yeah. Isn't that right, you little furball? So, let's see what happens if I go here. Still only one person watching. I'm probably going to go nuts because I'm probably going to find out that I had it set to private. Yeah. Wouldn't that be ridiculous? Yeah, the Q&A format really doesn't work if nobody's watching. There's no questions to answer. Aha, I have someone in here with me now. That lets me know I didn't accidentally set it on private. Yay! Okay, so. What? Do you have any questions about sculpting for tabletop miniatures, etc., etc.? And he's gone. Alright, so now it's looking, it's saying it get one watching, but you spoke up. But I'm confused. Okay, now it's saying 2 watching. Okay. Do you have any questions about sculpting tabletop miniatures? Because the whole point of this is it's a Q&A. And without questions, I've got no answers. Favorite sources of inspiration for personal sculpts as opposed to sculpts that are done, on commission. I usually just like to find pictures of actual historical armor, clothing. For science fiction, right now my biggest sci-fi influences are a combination of Warhammer 40k. No, I didn't just say Warhammer 40k. Yes, I did. And Overwatch. And for near future, of all things, the utterly horrible and stupid movies of Starship Troopers. And of course, for present day, it's present day. In the words of the anime Lane, present day, present time. So yeah. When it comes to critters, I'm not that great at doing realistic, actual biological living things like wolves or horses or the like. But when I go to do something like the hunting drake, it's kind of a mix. The hunting drake has elements of alligator, iguana, cheetah, and other big cats. And, I mean, you can see the cheetah easily. You can see where the cheetah comes into play. And there's a little bit of saurian influence. The tail, most reptile tails wouldn't bend like this, at least not on a reptile this size. They'd only go forward to back. The head, well, the head is inspired by all sorts of different dragon drawings from the past. And the scales, well, again, the scales are based on an alligator. And then with a couple, like the shoulder bits, just added on. This is FDM. This is printed on a CR10. Let me zoom in. This was printed on a CR10. You can see the layer lines if you look closely. I don't know if you can, but you can see like the remnants of the supports underneath his chest and under his tail. But yeah, this is FDM. One thing that I've been doing, you may or may not have noticed, but I've been designing miniatures for a Kickstarter I'm planning. I used the default supports in Craftware. Craftware is my go-to slicer for FDM. It's not only does it do automatic supports, you can also place and remove individual supports for areas that need it. But like I was saying, I'm doing giants. From the FDM side, the most recent prints. These are what are called Basajuan. They're from the area, the Basque area, which is on the border of Spain and France. And just for scale, here's a Nordic warrior and the Basajuan. As you can tell by his face, they're friendly. Not only these are the FDM prints. Notice that they're the same green as that dragon. That's because one of my favorite filaments is deep green from Ziltech. That's these guys. As of this morning, I painted the resin prints of these guys. Now, these bases are as they come. In other words, I designed them to basically be grass, shrubs. And if someone who comes later wants to have more decorative, it's dull enough that they can add other things. Now, why I use the deep green, it's number one, it shows well on a decent picture any flaws or other problems, but at the same time, it prints well. This is another recent print. This was finished this morning. As you can see, I still haven't finished removing all the support material. This is Farragut. Farragut is from the epic poem The Horn of Roland. He was an enemy of Roland, who was, Roland is the first, or the true paladin of Charlemagne, one of the 12 paladins. And this is the resin print. I still have a little bit of pegs to clean off on him too, but you can see the stitching right up in here on the side of the scale. You can see the mail on his hips and the scales, and that expression. I'll be painting this probably in another day or two. His sword, well, he was supposed to be a giant Saracen. Therefore, he is a giant Saracen. And again, for scale, here's our little Norse warrior next to Farragut. He is a 5th edition hill giant, for all intents and purposes, but with several levels of fighter. And the Battlemaster path, which means he's got techniques, not just me hit hard. I've also started on Beowulf and Roland. It'll be a while before they're done. Yeah, this is how I paint. I use blue tack to stick the miniatures on top of old apple barrel folk art type paints that my mom had that are all dried out and used up. So that way I can just grab here, place the heel of your palm against your fist, and you've got a lot more control and a lot more precision. Also, some of you may not have seen the finished Grendel. I showed you I was working on Beowulf. Well, here's Grendel. I better put him. This is the FDM. I'm making it a point that each of the giants will be printed in both FDM and resin. I will be painting the resin ones, but not the FDM ones, just to show, yes, they can be printed. Every single one of those giants was printed in one shot. Giant here, their base at a slight angle here, print away. I've got a couple more to I've got a couple more to make before I actually start the Kickstarter. But it's coming. Now, oh, by the way, my paints. Yes, it's mostly Vallejo, a couple Army Painter, and only one Games Workshop paint. Agrax Earthshade. Also, some people jokingly call it Talent in a Bottle. Okay. Okay. With those giants, I was using 0.16 millimeter layer height. If I was going to actually print them for someone to paint, I would have used a 0.08. When it comes to if your layer height's too low, hurting quality, it's more of a resonance thing. You see, and some people have disagreed with me about this and tried to call me out on it, and I just pointed out, I've done it. I've seen it with my own two eyes. This is what happens. There is a certain resonance with the number of steps in your stepper motor for the Z-axis. And if you don't have the right number of steps, if you don't have a layer height that has a nice even number of steps for that layer height, your layer heights will be doing this. And it's off by a little, to the point where it can actually distort the shape slightly. Sometimes a little bit of a change can be a huge improvement. For example, on the CR10, not a CR10S or any others, I can't verify that. On the regular CR10, a layer height of 0.08 is at least half again, if not twice as good as a 0.1. A 0.04 is theoretically possible, but it's smushing it so tightly that it causes the layer... tell you what, let me open up Photoshop and I'll draw on screen exactly what I mean. Okay? Well, let's go ahead and click over here. Now, new. There's my tablet. Basically, let's just say you print at a 0.08 and you get a single layer or a single path that's something like that. Okay? When you try to go smaller, it starts distorting the edges because it's smooshing down so much. So that the next layer, it'll be smooshed out a little bit more, or smooshed in, or it'll be sucked in. You want something that, when you're printing with a, something like that, you're going to start losing control below a certain size. Now, if you got a 0.02 0.2 nozzle, a 0.04 is much more possible, much easier to control. But with a 0.4 nozzle, really at a 0.08, below that you're going to have some issues. You can probably pull it off, but you won't have as much of an increase in quality as you might think. Also, the other thing to remember, let's see, do I have another pen over here? No, I don't. No, I don't. Okay. Well, Printing with a point 4 nozzle is like drawing with one of those chisel tip Sharpies with the chisel flat on, and following and arcing to follow your path. You can get some decent detail in there, but it's going to have some of the smaller detail is just going to wiggle on. A point 2 nozzle, you can get finer detail on the horizontal, the XY, and you're going to see far more of a change at that than you are with changing the layer height. Layer height is only one direction of the resolution you're improving. With DLP, the photon in that, this is straight off the printer, no primer, but I did clean it up. Let me zoom in. Let's zoom in really close. Alright, so if you look really close, and then this, let me grab this. If you look there on the center of the chest, you can see some of the layers. Those layers are not the horizontal layers. Those are voxels. That's the fact that with DLP, each layer is a single flashed image on a screen, and that screen has pixels. So each pixel is 0.047 millimeters by 0.047. Itty bitty tiny, but it's enough that eventually you'll be able to see it. So really and truly, below about a 0.04 layer height on DLP, you're not going to see as much improvement, because you start running into that you're only increasing one resolution and not the other two axes. It also makes it take a whole lot longer. Meanwhile, I made this for a friend for Christmas. Or not made, but printed. And it perfect the first try. So whoever says that the printer knows when you're in a hurry, it was wrong. Alright, do we have any other questions? Oh, by the way, this comes from being an idiot. I was shaking up my tanned flesh color and forgot I had taken the cap off. Okay, first of all, on the photon. The photon, the Wanhao D7, and other DLP machines. Printing one miniature takes the same amount of time as printing 10. Or printing 5, maybe, depending on how you organize them. And it all depends on the height. Let's go ahead and pull up one of my goblins. Where are they? Yeah, here's a good one. Here's a perfect example. This guy. He was printed on the photon. And just looking at the base, I can see how I had oriented him. He was oriented like that. Now, let's break out the calipers and see how high that is. From the highest point to the lowest point. At this angle, you're looking at about 35 millimeters. At this angle, printing them upright, it's 45. printing them like this will take much longer than printing them like that. Simply because each layer takes the same amount of time, and the more layers you use, the more problems you'll have. The longer it'll take, rather. But printing him by himself and then printing him with this, which is almost exactly the same height, this will take the same amount of time as this, which will take the same amount of time as this. It's all based on the height of not the size or volume. As for time in general, that'll vary depending on the resin you're using. A clear resin won't take as long because it won't take as long per layer to cure. An opaque resin will take a lot longer. The Giants, just to give you an idea, good old Farragut took about 12 hours for the figure, and then with the base at an angle so it fits in the bed, another 7 hours for the base. And that's at 0.035 layer height, which is as low as I care to go. Now, Omerta, what kind of printer have you been printing them on? That's the first question. Not just FDM or resin, which printer? Is it on an Ender 3, on a Photon, on a Prusa? An Ender 3, okay. My goblins are a little thin, especially Mr. Thunderpokey. The best thing I can tell you is there's 2 profiles out there for the Ender 3 for Cura that a lot of people are getting outstanding results from, and that's the CP profile and the Fat Dragon Games profile. I don't have links to them right now, but you can easily find them if you just Google Fat Dragon Games Cura profile or CP. It's SIEPIE Cura profile. The next thing is supports. A lot of people are taking miniatures like this and printing them like that. Number one, it would make the spear stronger because the layer lines will be following along the shaft of the spear instead of it being slices up the shaft. And number two, they might do it like this, so that all of the markings will be on the side that will be least likely seen, because most people will look at it from like this angle. When it comes to something like, let me look for the other gobos. There it is. Trying to find some of these guys. Ah, here we go. Here's another one. This one's opaque, so it's a little bit easier to see. This guy here, you've got to play with the angles because of the way that sword is. So, for example, printing it so that one of the swords is pointing up and one of the swords is pointing down. That way you don't have to worry about supports between the chest and the sword. You know, as opposed to printing them back like that, where you'd have to have supports between the chest and the sword. But printing them like that, you'd have to make sure there's a support on the ear, tip of the sword, elbow, etc., etc. Again, this is printed in resin on the Photon. This particular one is printed in the Wanhao resin, dark gray. I didn't particularly care for it. I've had bad results with opaque resins compared to clear ones. They tend to be stronger and more resilient, but more flexible, whereas the clear ones tend to be more brittle. But by the same token, the detail feels more rubbery than it does on the harder, clear resins. That's why I've gone back to the... right now, most of my prints are in the Anycubic red resin. I've had the best luck with it. For example, from a couple weeks ago, dried her. You look on the bottom, you see it was done in green resin. But it kept all... This is primed and a little bit of... primed in medium gray and given a little bit of a light gray. Okay. Is anyone else seeing the broadcast going in and out? But as for what software I use, for actually making base geometry or making props like swords and things like that, I use 3D Studio Max. I'm into Daz Studio, and I'm going to show you why here in just a second. This is Daz Studio. I rigged my base figure in it. I do not use any of the default geometry that comes in Daz Studio because that's against the end user license agreement. So I created my own. It's all not human proportions because miniatures really aren't human proportions. But because of the way this is, here you can see the bones. Those little triangle, those little diamond shapes are the bones. For example, I click there, and it moves at that bone. But what I can do, I took that geometry into ZBrush, and I can create a blend shape. I drag the points around until I create the shape I like, and then I can have the program automatically follow. I mean, sometimes it gets extremely different. Like right here. Another reason I chose this is because it has what's called smart props. Let's go ahead and let me show you what happens to the right hand when I in a Celtic arming sword. There, did you see that? The hand is now closed, and it's wrapped around the handle of the sword. So now if I click on the forearm and I bend, the sword goes with it. Another thing that's interesting is that you can save poses you like. So for example, the pose that I used to create my personal avatar figure is this. I saved that pose. If I want to use it for a goblin, I have a goblin in that pose. If I want to use it for an ogre, I have an ogre in that pose. If I want to use it for a reptilian, I'm going to import a random section from an earlier miniature. Let's say the body of my Ronin from the other day. Okay. And with this, what I can do is I can sculpt on it as it is, or I can even subdivide it quite a bit and subdivide finer detail and sculpt in finer detail. Now that obviously is just like some kind of tumorous growth. I can smooth out the figure, losing detail, or I can do a weird thing where it unsmooths. Isn't that interesting looking? And any number of other techniques. So that's pretty much the software that I use. And we have at least one other viewer. Hello. I see Eledrian and Omerta are talking. But we have a fourth person who's not talking.
Talk, you could. Learn, you might.
The original intent of this was for about people. I'm trying to get to a point where people are interested in learning to sculpt their own figure. No, I don't think so, because I'm getting feedback. Something's happening with ZBrush, with YouTube itself. My goal is that people who want to make their own figures, and I don't just mean with the Lego parts from, with all due respect, Hero Forge and the other make your own figure. I mean, I want him to have a mohawk with 3 spikes and a dangly jingle bell from the front, and they can make it. You know, my character is using a flail whose flail head is shaped like a spider leg. They can make it. That is my goal. Well, it is 1:45. I haven't even been on an hour. And I've already dropped enough frames to be equal to, let's see, almost a full minute. Yay. And it just, yeah. And add some more to that. Yeah, that's another 120 frames dropped. Out of curiosity, let's see what happens. Let's go ahead and go to the speed test. A 9 millisecond ping. About a 250, almost 260 download speed. Or 286 download speed. And about a 21 upload speed. Maybe 22. Yeah, I don't think it's my connection. Well, considering I'm seeing it happen too, my money's on YouTube. Never swallow these. I always put them into a different can. Now, is there anyone out there that has questions on technique? Like, how do I sculpt chainmail, which I have an entire video pretty much dedicated, and things like that. Oh. Well, see, the thing is, I have a lot of viewers who will come in and that are regulars, but none of them are in right now. Nope, none of them were in. Yay. Okay. Alright, well, thank you for coming by, Omerta. I'm glad to know I answered your questions. Eledrian Fangorn. I'm assuming that's how you pronounce Eledrian. Did I happen to answer your questions about the goblins and printing them? Oh, it was Omerta who had the problem printing the goblins. Okay. But again, I asked, do we have any further questions? Okay. So, here's what's going to happen. Without questions, there's no Q&A. I'm here. Ask me. There's only 3 people, 2 people. Come on, Fuzzbutt. Yes, you can do it. Oh. Well, it's looking like it's gonna be problems today, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna call this broadcast here. It's a bit of a short show, not even an hour long. But, oh well, and when no one's here and no one's asking questions, I've got nothing to do on a Q&A. I don't know what you want. I don't know what you need. So, I will be heading out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bye-bye until tonight.